Hey everyone, I'm Amy Wheeler-Sutton from the Vermont PBIS BEST project, and I'm here today to talk to you about the Tiered Fidelity Inventory 3.0, which is the new version of the Tiered Fidelity Inventory that we are rolling out in Vermont this year. So we're excited to help you learn more. There's kind of two ways to watch this video. If you want to watch for just a minute or two, we will give you a brief overview. And if you'd like to stick around, we will go more in depth with some more information about the Tiered Fidelity Inventory. So I'll let you know when you can hop off if you just want the overview, and then we'll keep going if you want to get deeper into the content. So we want to begin by just saying, trust us, it's not scary. It is a little different than the 2.1 in a few ways, so we want to make sure you're informed, but you've got this. We are here to support you. For this year only, we are offering for your TA or coach to facilitate the Tiered Fidelity Inventory for your team to get you used to the TFI 3.0, answer any questions you have. So we're offering that as a service to all of our Vermont PBIS schools for free this year. So the first most important step, if you don't listen to anything else in this video, is to reach out to your TA and they will help get you set up to be able to do the TFI 3.0. And we just want to remember the why behind why we're doing this. So we really want schools to be able to assess how their PBIS implementation is going, measure growth, look for areas where they can improve, and really be able to show progress over time. So we want to thank the folks at PBIS Apps and the National PBIS TA Center who have done a ton of work to validate this tool and to provide training resources for us. So we're hoping that by the end of this video, you will understand the new features of the TFI 3.0, be able to identify the differences between the two versions, and to be able to locate lots of resources to help you administer this. And the first resource I want to mention is this Tiered Fidelity Inventory Manual, which you can see a picture of the cover to the right-hand side, and that includes all of the items, the glossary, directions for administration, everything you could want to know about doing the TFI 3.0. So for those of you who might not be familiar with the TFI at all, the TFI is a valid, reliable, and efficient measure of the extent to which school teams are applying the core features of school-wide PBIS. And this is a tool that is used and normed nationwide. It has 3 scales, so you're able to assess Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. And that brings me to the first difference, which is that Tier 1, which is what most of you complete every year, now has 20 items. So it's been taking our teams around an hour to complete Tier 1. So we just want to make sure you have enough time so that you're able to complete the full Tier 1 TFI. Tier 2 has 15 items, so we're budgeting around 40 to 50 minutes. And Tier 3 has 19 items, so again, about an hour. So you want to make a plan with your TA about who's completing which tiers and how to get that done in the time that you have. So here in Vermont, we encourage schools to complete the Tiered Fidelity Inventory annually at least, and it's really intended to be completed by a school team, not just the coordinator or the administrator, and ideally with an external TA or coach present to be able to answer questions and provide some clarification where needed. Especially this year, with it being a new TFI, we are highly encouraging that an external TA or coach be present for your first time doing it. So the teams come to consensus on a score for each item. You can have folks complete it on their own on paper first and bring their scores to the meeting and then compare scores people gave. And it sometimes can speed up that process of getting to consensus. And then one person enters the scores into PBIS Assessment, which is a free website you have access to. And if you don't have access, you can email Ann Dubie. So the TFI might be used for initial assessment before you roll out PBIS to see if you need it, what your baseline is, and then as you're implementing to guide implementation. And we in Vermont also use it as a metric for our recognition and acknowledgement process. And you might be wondering, why is there a new TFI? And the reason is that it really incorporates a few elements that weren't as explicit in the first TFI 2.0. So it really gets deeper into classroom practices and classroom coaching. It embeds mental health and equity. It includes items on crisis response, and it says how far you've gone with getting voice from key partners such as students, families, and the community. It better aligns both with the current guidance and the training content that's available through the National Center on PBIS and through Vermont PBIS. So that's why we're really excited to be able to roll out the TFI 3.0 and to be able to push schools in a direction toward continuous improvement. So if you are at your time limit and you want to hop off for the briefer version of this video, feel free. And again, please reach out to your TA for more information. If you'd like to stick around, we're going to dive in a little deeper. So like I mentioned, in that TFI manual, there is a glossary and acronym key, and that might be really helpful for your team as you're going through and seeing different items that might be less familiar to you. Like, what does it really mean when they say culturally responsive? Or what kind of data are they talking about when they say community data? So that glossary and acronym key is a great tool to use within the guide. And we also wanted to draw your attention to some intentional language changes that they've made. As you know, the way we talk about students and families and the words we choose really matter and can change mindset. And so this new TFI incorporates language that is person first, inclusive, and specific. So you'll see a few new terms. The first one is contextually inappropriate behavior rather than problem behavior or challenging behavior. In Vermont, we have moved to the term interfering behavior. So wherever you see contextually inappropriate behavior in the TFI, if you're a school that uses that language of interfering behavior, you can replace it with that. You also might be wondering what they're referring to when they mention equity, and they use this definition from the Great Lakes Equity Center, which is that in education, equity is when educational policies, practices, interactions, and resources are representative of, constructed by, and responsive to all people, so that everyone has access to, meaningfully participates in, and experiences success through a high-quality learning environment that recognizes and honors individual characteristics and group identities. It also mentions marginalized groups, and the definition here is that they're groups of students that receive disparate rates of exclusionary discipline based on their group membership, and those groups are fluid and are identified each year based on your school data. So it's not a set group of students, but rather who are the groups of students that may be receiving disparate rates of exclusionary discipline based on their group membership. You'll also see the term partner used throughout the tool, and that is in place of stakeholder, and it refers to people like students, families, educators, staff, depending on the question. And so it's recommended that leadership teams be specific and identify the actual groups that you intend to engage or impact when they say partners. And then social emotional behavioral or SEB support is comprehensive support that addresses how students interact, feel, and act as critical components of overall well-being and mental health. So the scoring has changed. On the TFI 2.1, there was a 3-point scale, so you were giving each item a 0, 1, or 2. That is now a 5-point scale, so you have the ability to give yourself a 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4, and that really helps teams to be able to distinguish and gives an opportunity for you to go a little bit past where a 2 was on the previous TFI. So your points total might be similar to the 2.1. So if you gave yourself on a 2 on a certain item on the 2.1, you might be giving yourself a 2 on the 3.0, but there is that opportunity to grow to a 3 or a 4. So your points total might be similar or the same as when you did the 2.1, but your percentage is likely to drop because there are more possible points. So the new TFI 3.0 with the 5-point scale, there are clear indicators, so you're able to score more accurately and also better able to enhance action planning because it gives you an idea of where you can head. So the Fidelity percentage has changed because that increase in the number of possible points. So on the 2.1, we considered 70% to be implementing with Fidelity. On the TFI 3.0, it's 50%. So we know that this might be hard for people to accept. Those of us who really were worried about grades when we were back in school, 50% sounds terrible, but we want you to know that that's really what we're aiming for, is 50% on this tool. There is a way to convert your scores from the 2.1 to the 3.0 or vice versa. So if you're curious what score you get on the 3.0 translates to what you would have gotten on the 2.1. There are conversion tables available for you. And just some tips around administration of the TFI. Try not to get bogged down in the minutia of the wording. You really want to keep in mind, what is the main idea of this question? What's the big picture that we're trying to measure? And then adapt your conversations using the TFI as a guide. So there is a new tool that is available for you to use before you do the TFI, and there is an update of an existing tool. So the first tool in Appendix A is the walkthrough interview and observation form. So for those of you who did the TFI 2.1, you might be familiar with this, but there are some additional questions and some changes to the language. The other is Appendix B, which is a classroom data summary worksheet, and that involves looking at some classroom implementation of best practices at Tier 1. So for the TFI walkthrough, it's going to give you a snapshot of school-wide implementation of PBIS. It informs several items on the TFI, and it takes about 20 to 30 minutes. We do recommend that someone who is external to the school complete the walkthrough. However, if you're using it pretty often, someone internal can complete it. So you'll see the TFI features that it informs. And these are the questions. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I just want to give you a glance at the questions. These are the ones for staff members. And then these are what it looks like if you are completing it on paper. One question that we want to draw your attention to is there's a question around how teachers are integrating expectations within academic and social emotional behavioral instruction. So it gives a few options of how they might do that. And then you also could make some notes about if they give different types of answers to that question. These are the questions for students. And you'll notice there's one that's added, which is, are you acknowledged or rewarded in ways that you like or are meaningful to you? Which is a question I think is really important that we weren't asking before. This is what it looks like as you're recording your answers. And then moving to Appendix B, the TFI Classroom Data Summary Worksheet. This is new and it is optional, but it's helpful to inform the question around whether key teacher skills are being utilized in the classroom, such as greetings at the door, opportunities to respond, specific praise statements. So the idea is that someone would go into a classroom, hopefully about 60% of classrooms or more, and across time. So we know that some teachers have a bad day and are maybe not using all the strategies they know. So we want to get a sense across time of whether teachers are using these skills. And this could be done in a few different ways. So teachers could collect data on themselves, maybe using a clicker, clicking every time they use the skill. You could use peer observations, so teacher teams could pair up and observe one another. It could be done by a coach or a mentor. If you have someone like a literacy coach, maybe that they could slide this into an observation they're already doing, or it could be done by administrators in a non-evaluative way. So this is used to answer item 1.10 on classroom procedures. You'll see a little bit more about what that looks like. It's a pretty simple yes or no, was the skill observed, and then calculating what percentage of classrooms it was observed in. And then you might be wondering, well, what do we do once we get all of our scores and scores for each item? We have an action planning template available for you, which has been updated to reflect the new TFI 3.0. So in it, you'll see all the items. You can put your score in and then think a little bit about, was this an item that you wanted to improve on? What work might you need to be doing, by whom, by when, and what level of priority is this for you? It also gives you a sense of other surveys that might have an item that would inform your response to this question. So for instance, 1.1 team composition, there's also an item on the SAS, the self-assessment survey, that speaks to team composition. So in terms of next steps, again, we would love for you to contact your Best Project TA to discuss how they can best support your team. We can come and do the walkthrough, we can facilitate the TFI with your team, provide resources, and we would guide you as your TA through the steps. So arranging for the walkthrough to take place, who's going to do that and when, consider how you might use that classroom data summary worksheet, and we have a few different versions that you could access. And then if you're someone who is going to be facilitating TFI, we want you to review the items in the manual in advance so you're really familiar with them and are able to answer questions from your team. And then, like I mentioned, completing the TFI PBIS assessment at pbis.org with those scores and recognizing that now 50% is implementing with Fidelity, and then scheduling a time for you to action plan around what you learned. So we have tons of resources that are available for you, and your TA can help guide you to these. They're also all on our website, so I'm not going to go through all of them, but please know that there are lots of resources available for you. And then the National Center put together some resources that you could use if you wanted to dive into a particular area as you're action planning. So for instance, if you're really seeing some of the questions that are talking about equity as an area for improvement, there are lots of resources from the National Center that can support your equity work, your crisis recovery work, classroom practices, mental health support, and getting staff, student, family voice. So we don't want you to feel like if you didn't score as well as you wanted on a certain item that you're stuck and that there's nothing out there to help you. There really are a lot of resources available. So if you have any questions, again, contact your TA. If you're not sure who your TA is, please reach out to Ann Doobie, and this is Ann's email address. You also can reach out to her if you're having trouble getting on to PBIS assessment, and she will be glad to help you. And we just want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video, get up to speed on the TFI 3.0, and we're really excited to see what we learn from all of you. So thank you so much, and have a great day.